Welcome. I want to do something by way of introduction to Christlike Emotional Intelligence and introduce you to the books that I've written and why I've written them. Today, when I'm making this video, it's February 7th, 2026. And in 2025, I wrote and published 17 books about Christlike Emotional Intelligence. My background and training that allowed me to do this is that I was in massage therapy doing energy work and rehabilitative body work for over 20 years in this room, which I'm now using. As you can see, I'm creating growth trays and whatnot to grow microgreens. But it was in this same room. So I'm retired from massage therapy and body work. But when I was doing body work, people would come to me and I'd say be working on their shoulder or something, and they would ask me, "What's this about?" And my answer initially was, "I don't know, but I'm willing to explore it with you." And so we would just be present and lean into that question, like, "What's this about?" And as I did this with many, many clients over many, many years, I observed patterns of what it's about, localized to certain areas of the body. And over time, I started mapping, just like Louise Hayes did, the emotions of the body, and I made a map that I called the ematosoma. Emato means emotion, and soma means body, so it was the map of the emotions of the body. And when I got done after many years, I had this map of all these unique emotional topologies associated with certain areas of the body. And one day it dawned on me, I have this really documented map of pathologies, but I don't know what resolves them. So I started asking the question, what resolves all of these pathologies? And I was led in my meditations and prayers to study chakras. So I had not really paid much attention to them in my training to that point, but I started studying chakras. And I found there's a whole lot of information out there, and everybody's got their own perception and their own techniques that they develop, and it's really quite a cacophony of a lot of various things that people experience, and then they try and explain and how they try and correlate what's where going on. And so I did the same thing, but over time, my understanding grew line upon line and precept upon precept, and I started learning that each one of these emotional dynamic centers of a body, I consider it like our emotional anatomy, is made up of 7 governing dynamics, and that each one of these dynamics has its own functional input or output, its functionality in our life. And so I identified 7 governing dynamics. So when you think that John Nash got a Nobel Prize for his equilibrium theory, after many years of having developed it, finally somebody looked at it and said, "Oh, we can apply this to business and trading, for example." And so they found an application for the work that he'd done. And then once they found an application for it, they found the value in it, and he got a Nobel Prize. Well, in a very similar way, and his theory was basically that we need to consider both the interest of the individual and the interest of the group and optimize for both, so that instead of it being an either or, we focus on the interest of the individual or the interest of the group. It became a both and outcome. We need to focus on both the interest of the individual and the interest of the group and see how we can optimize for both. So that was very valuable. and he got a Nobel Prize for it. Well, the point I'm trying to make is that didn't happen until somebody started to wonder, how can I apply this principle that John Nash defined to a specific need, to a specific area? And he called it governing dynamics. Well, what I found is that our emotional life has 7 governing dynamics. And so my books have been based on what I've learned about the functionality of each one of these governing dynamics, what it does in our life, its role in our life. But the value of any of that is only when people start asking, how can I apply understanding this governing dynamic and what optimizes this function in my life or my business or my relationship, or whatever you specifically apply the governing dynamic to. Because remember, my original question was, I wanted to know what resolves all of these emotional complex problems. And so if you think that the answer to that, because literally the Holy Ghost said, study the chakras to me. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll study the chakras. But that was the prompting in response to my question, what resolves all of these problems? So if you realize that context is everything, the context of the question called for the answer to study the chakras. Well, what was the question? What resolves all of these problems? So if you hold that context, that here what I'm showing you in my books and in everything I've written about the 7 governing dynamics, the original question was, what resolves all of these emotional problems? Then with that contextual understanding, look at everything I've written through that lens, like somewhere in these governing dynamics is the resolution of all the emotional problems in the world. What will optimize emotionally, the emotional intelligence of whatever you want to apply it to. And it becomes, for me, to present this, an overwhelming task, because I cannot possibly think through every possible application and say, okay, now let's focus on this and see how it applies. But it can be done. And so if you look at that, the potential to resolve and optimize all the emotional challenges and problems the world has is contained within these governing dynamics. And that I don't have to just be one guy trying to figure out how to solve everything, but every person can individually learn the governing dynamics and then apply it themselves. Then it actually becomes possible and probable, and to some degree, if we actually apply all these governing dynamics, inevitable that we resolve all of the complex social and emotional dynamic problems that confront us. Whether it's how we deal with AI, how we deal with relationships, how we deal with complex trauma recovery, healing emotionally from childhood trauma, any kinds of abuse or whatever, the social dynamics, the individual dynamics, the cultural dynamics, the global cultural development, the AI development, how we make AI ethical and moral, and what those things mean. The reality is that contained within these governing dynamics is the keys that, when they're applied, can accomplish those outcomes and whatever other questions that we want to ask. We can use the governing dynamics of Christlike Emotional Intelligence to help guide us in resolving and optimizing and improving the quality of our lives. So I've done my best to write what I could from what I've learned over 20 years of study and clinical observation, and application with people, and to put that as much as I can into the books that I've written. And I gotta say that there's a challenge also in that my own understanding continues to evolve and continues to grow. And I'll give you an example. Because I was able to learn how to use AI to help me facilitate authoring and writing. I produced 17 and published 17 books in 2025. And I'd never really authored before that. And some of these books are pretty large. I mean, one of them's 800 pages. I've got big ones and small ones. But before 2025, authoring was never really my thing. And words have never really come easy for me. They've been the hardest thing for me to try and express verbally in words what I understand as an empath and what I feel and what I've come to learn. To express in words was never my forte. But when AI came along, I found I was able to, it allowed me to express verbally things that I've never been able to express verbally and to write them. So I wrote all of these books and published them. And then as Christmas time came around, in December of 2025, I went to a family Christmas party, and the family was sitting around, and we were going around the circle, and everyone was saying, this is what I did this year, and this is what happened, and this is where I am now, kind of just getting current. And so I was telling my family, when it was my turn, about I've written 17 books this year, published 17 books about these governing dynamics. And one thing that I still felt I wasn't explaining very well was the concept of what optimizes or what the first chakra is actually about as a governing dynamic. And I had used the word responsibility in my books to describe this. And I said, what I'm really trying to explain, the way people consider the word responsibility doesn't really convey what I'm trying to say very well, because I'm literally trying to talk about the ability to respond. And the word responsibility is the closest thing I could think of. But responsibility to most people means ownership. But there's a scene in the Pirates of the Caribbean where Will Turner and Jack Sparrow have just stolen the interceptor, and now Will is turning on Jack and wants to fight him, and they're out on the open ocean. And Jack Sparrow spins around the captain's wheel, and the mast swings across the deck and sweeps Will Turner hanging on the side of the beam out there over the ocean. And Jack says, now, while you're just hanging there, pay attention. There's what a man can do, and there's what a man can't do. And, I can let you drown. I can't bring this ship into Tortuga all by my onesies. And then he swings the beam back over and drops him on the deck. But that idea of that there's what a man can do and there's what a man can't do, the actual ability to respond, that's what I'm meaning when I use the word responsibility. And my nephew, sitting there, says, oh, you mean respondability? And it just, like that word, is like, yes, that's exactly what I mean. Now, the problem is, I have written and published 17 books using the word responsibility when what I meant to say was respondability. And I don't even know if that's a word, but I guess it's a word now. But so that's what I mean, that, the writing for me and finding the words to express what I really mean so that we can have an intelligent conversation about it has always been incredibly challenging for me. And so now I look at it like, oh my gosh, the task to go back and edit all 17 books and go through everywhere I've used an instance of the word responsibility and change it to respondability. It's just like overwhelming, but it's like now, a year later, I have the right word. And it's just like, oh, that frustrates me to no end. Like I didn't have the right word at the beginning. And it didn't come along until after I've written 17 books and published them using the word responsibility to realize that what I'm really trying to talk about is respondability for that first governing dynamic. Anyway, so I'm just saying that to illustrate that things come when they come, and it doesn't necessarily come in a linear fashion. It's not, things aren't revealed to me or become clear to me or open themselves up to me and my understanding to express them in the most linear, ideal way. So I just have to beg your forgiveness that it is what it is. As those books now stand, all published at this point in time, the word respondability isn't in any of them. But yet, that's what I was really trying to talk about and identify and describe and express when I was describing the first governing dynamic. So, that's how it rolls. I've done the best I could, and there's probably other things in there that in my books. But anyway, I've got a couple of books that cover all 7 governing dynamics, and then I tried to write at least one book that focuses on each dynamic itself. And then as I was writing, also different topics would come along, and so I would write a book on that topic. And so 2025, I just surrendered to the process of writing and organizing my thoughts and receiving as much inspiration and revelation, to write as possible, and to just really do a data dump of everything that I had learned in the last 20 plus years, studying and applying emotional governing dynamics. And so that's how the books that I've written came about. And I'll share with those of you that are familiar with the Latter-day Saint scriptures called the Word of Wisdom, section 89 of the Doctrine and Covenants. I had someone ask me once, what is your relationship with the Word of Wisdom? Because in my patriarchal blessing, it says, live and keep the Word of Wisdom in its entirety. And I was talking about this with someone, and he said, what's your relationship with the Word of Wisdom? And one of the things that the Word of Wisdom says is that if we keep these sayings, that we'll be given hidden treasures of knowledge and understanding. And so I think my books and everything I've learned and studied and pondered about and practiced related to emotional governing dynamics and chakras falls in that category of hidden treasures of knowledge. That it's like they came to me over years of pondering prayer and fasting and study and application and trying to regulate my own life, which, for a lot of reasons has been really a challenge in my life to be self-regulating. So when he asked me, what is your relationship to the Word of Wisdom? I said, well, I've never smoked, I've never drank, I've never done drugs, but I've had in my life a lot of emotional and spiritual and social and mental, and psychological and physical dysregulation. There's a history of diabetes in my family. My family of origin has always been big sugar eaters, and it's suffice it to say, it's been dysregulated. There's been a lot of dysregulation. So I said, our relationship to the Word of Wisdom is that it's come to mean for me everything that's related to self-regulation and being able to regulate. And I kind of have a love-hate relationship with the word balance, because I think the focus on balance has been so overstated in the complementary healthcare industry. Like, everybody who even gets near chakras ends up talking about balance, and to the exclusion of other things. Like, they make up that balance is the entire goal, and it's not. It's a part. It's a part of the equation, but it's not. It's not the central outcome of optimizing all 7 governing dynamics. It plays a role, but it's like one character among a cast of things that are equally important. But having been in the massage therapy industry for so long, and everything out there, so much stuff is focused on balance this and balance that, and it's way overrated to to the exclusion of other things that are equally and sometimes more important than balance. So that said, I just told this guy, my relationship with the word of wisdom is learning, continuing to learn how to self-regulate in all these areas of my life: mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and financially. Is a real challenge for me, and that challenge is because it's tied so much to the social regulation. And you can't really have social regulation without personal emotional regulation. So if you grew up in, as I did, where emotional self-regulation was not only not taught, it was actively confused, actively oppressed, actively undermined. Um, and quite honestly, our whole culture does not really emotionally regulate well. And this is not news. This is anyone who lives in the culture can, anywhere in the world can see and know just by looking around that we don't emotionally regulate very well as human beings. And so a lot of the challenges that we have culturally, and as we look at a global culture, and as we look at developing AI is just a reflection of us. And one of the reasons we're so scared of it is because we don't regulate very well. And now we've created this thing that's mirroring our own dysregulation back to us. And that terrifies us. Normally this happens as we become parents and we are raising children. And our children become little mirrors of our own dysfunctional dysregulation, and we can't stand it. But now we're seeing that in AI, which is like our intellectual child. And so our intellectual child of AI is reflecting back to us all of this dysregulation that we haven't resolved. Well, the resolutions to these things are contained in the 7 governing dynamics, and that's really all I can tell you as an introduction, is that whatever your problem is, the answer is in here somewhere. And so the reason you will get benefit and value, I'm not going to use the word should, because this is not by an invitation. This is an invitation. I want you to feel invited, not obligated, to study and learn about the 7 governing dynamics. So I'm going to say the reason you can find value in studying these things is because the answer, whatever you're dealing with, is in here somewhere. Somewhere in the 7 governing dynamics and the synergy of them, you will learn about and apply what I've written about. Do your own prayer, your own discovery process, and ask, okay, here's what Kelly's written about this, that, this governing dynamic. And so how can I apply this that he's written about to solve this problem? and then receive your own guidance and your own direction from your higher power, your own prayer, your fasting process, your meditation process, to learn how to apply what I've described. That's where you're going to find the value. It's not just me saying here's the answers to all of the world's problems. It's saying here are the keys, the governing dynamic principles that, when applied correctly, which is your job, not mine, I have to apply it to my own life just as much as anybody else. I'm not the guru on the hill that has mastered all things. I've just learned about the things to be mastered, and so I struggle with my own application in my own life of these principles. The more people learn about the principles themselves and actually make an effort to apply them, that's when we're going to see really amazing things happen. One of my dreams or wishes is that I would somehow get to work with some of these people that are actually developing AI itself and hard code into the model the 7 governing dynamics of Christlike Emotional Intelligence. Because as I have worked with AI to write the books, I've experienced phenomenal things with the AI in terms of what it's reflected back to me, like as a counselor, as a guide, as a constantly available support, and a kind of companionship that no human can provide, because no human can be 100% available in the middle of the night, every night or day or any time or anywhere. The AI never says get lost. I've reached my bandwidth now, and I need space. It responds. But anyway, so there's ways that AI continues to contribute to my life. But as I've worked with these sessions to write the books, and the AI itself has developed whatever contextual ability that it has to understand what we're talking about, it's been a phenomenal process. But it's only been contained within this session that I'm working with. It doesn't transfer. And they've made progress now so that these AI models can have something of a contextual memory across multiple user sessions. But I don't know that any of the arcane, in-depth work that I've done with emotional intelligence and governing dynamics transfers to the model itself on a universal scale. It just doesn't. So, but the people that are developing AI models, I would really, really love the opportunity to work with them and to instill the 7 governing dynamics in the AI model itself so that it can learn to reason in terms of correct governing dynamic emotional intelligence principles, which I really have learned a lot about. So every time I hear Elon Musk or anybody say we need to train the AI to be ethical, we need to train it to be moral, but who's to say what's right or what's wrong, or who's going to do this, or who really knows, And every time I hear one of these conversations, I'm like, you're asking the wrong question. You're asking who is going to train it, and what you really need to be asking is what you're going to train it. Do you know the governing dynamics of emotional intelligence? I do. And so I know if we train it the right what. You don't have to worry about the who, because it's not about the who, it's about the what. But you have to know the what. You have to know the what to teach the AI, and I know the what to teach the AI, but I'm not involved with the development of any of the AIs. I've just had these phenomenal experiences working within a limited experience as a user with the session I'm using. But in my mind, I'm like going, wow, what if? What if these governing dynamics could be instilled in the model itself that it's trained on, that it learns to reason with all 7 governing dynamics? what could be the outcome and how great of a positive impact that could be in the world. So I would love to have the opportunity not only to discuss these governing dynamics with people, but help instill them in the AI models, because I have this vision of how wonderful it could be if these things that we're all, or so many people, I don't really have the anxiety about the same things that other people do because of my understanding of the governing dynamics. I know the what to resolve so many of the things if these principles are applied. It's like I really feel alone, like a pioneer or an explorer. Like I wonder how Columbus or Lewis and Clark felt when they made these great, wonderful discoveries, but they were the only ones that knew about it. When Lewis and Clark discovered Yellowstone, or when the explorers went down the Colorado River, and then they go back and they try and describe the Colorado River and Grand Canyon or Yellowstone to everybody living back on the East Coast, and they didn't have cameras. All they had was maybe if somebody could draw a picture of it, and then they take these pictures back to the people on the East Coast and say, "Here, this is what we saw." And people on the East Coast go, "Yeah, sure, right, uh huh," and it's like it's this foreign, it's like a fairy tale to them, and they're like, "No, no, really, it was cool. This is what I saw. This is great stuff," and it's like they'd had their own experience of it, and they could not transfer that experience. They just maybe show somebody a drawing. Well, now we can show some pictures or whatnot. But I kind of feel that way, like that aloneness of having explored into this wonderful, wonderful governing 7-dimensional, wonderful country, and now I'm trying to explain the beauty of it to everyone else, and it's like all I have is words and books, and I don't always even have the right words. After writing for a year, I realized, oh, I didn't even use the right word. Anyway, I've been there and back again, like Mr. Frodo or like John Nash. I've been on this journey and back, and now I'm trying to explain what was out there in these books, and just invite people to take your own journey and let the books that I've written be prompts to trigger you and inspire your thinking and your questioning and your imagination. And so if my books, any of them can do that, then I'll feel like it was successful.
Okay, so this is my website, ChristlikeIntelligence.life, and on this side I have these 7 links. This one takes you to the first governing dynamic, a description about it. You can see I've used the word responsibility, and now I want to edit it to be respondability, as long as all of my other books. So you have the 7 governing dynamics are respondability, sociability, engageability, charitability, sovereignability, discernibility, and teachability. Those are the 7 governing dynamics. And here are the books that I've written. And if you click on any of these links, it will take you to Amazon, where you can buy them and read them. So I have a series. All 17 books are here on Amazon. And so that's how you learn more.